Hi Sachet, good morning.
Hi, welcome to the cohort.
Thanks so much Sachet. Hi Bismay.
Astros.
So, how was the exercise, guys? The values exercise?
Uh, it was difficult for me to choose five values. I was choosing a lot, and then I could cross which were not so you know mandatory, right? But yeah, ranking them was easier for me. Yeah, once I reached the five set, yeah, because I always knew what are the things that I want most.
Okay. Hey, Ayush.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
Um, did, how did you find the values exercise? Can't can't hear you, Ayush.
Hi, hello.
Hello. Hey.
Uh, yeah, I didn't gone through that part.
Okay.
I missed
Cool.
that.
Cool. Um. Sure. So we have a lot of time this week also. So,
This week I will come.
हाँ, sure, sure. ठीक है. Let's wait for 2 more minutes if someone else joins. Otherwise, we'll begin. In the meantime, Ashutosh, Ayush, tell us something about yourself. What you guys been up to?
Sure, sure Sachet. So I'll begin. Uh, I'm currently working with Amazon Advertising as a business development manager for last 2.5 years. I bring total 5+ years of work experience in key account management and business development roles across two organizations, which is Amazon and Aditya Birla Group. Uh, Having spent 5 years in corporate, I am at that juncture that since I'm not fully enjoying what I am doing, I think it is right time for me to explore what I like and then take my career towards that direction. And your assignment one of finding your career values was in a way a reflection of putting structure to what I want. So that has kind of helped me in uh, beginning in putting some structure on how to proceed forward.
Okay.
So uh, that's a bit on me, Sachit.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Sachin.
Hey, Ayush.
Right now, I am doing masters from Punjab Singh College, Chandigarh. This is my final year, and it's been like it will be over. And I was associated with Intel from past 1 year as an intern, and I got in September I will be joining Intel as an associate design engineer, which is a chip in chip industry.
Okay, nice. And Ayush, what do you hope to achieve out of this course?
Like I just wanted to do something a bit extra,
Okay.
like
Okay, sure. To gain some clarity on what you are stepping into.
I didn't get time last week. From now I'm serious and I will look into this.
Oh, no, I meant your motivation to do this course. I wanted to understand that.
Motivation, I've gone through your LinkedIn post and I was like impressed by your post. That motivated me to do this
Okay,
course.
sure. Hi, Sumesh.
Hi, Sajid.
Hi, welcome to the cohort, Sumesh. Tell us something about yourself and what's motivating you to do this.
Okay, thank you, Sajid. Actually, I have been working with market research industry for more than 8 years, and recently I took a break for due to some family emergency. So now I need some clarity whether should I look for some other career or like should I continue with the market research market research industry. So I need some clarity about this. So I think this cohort will help me to understand what I really want.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking forward for.
Nice. Good. Sure. So we're going to start. We have a lot to cover this session. So I'll just. Before we start, do you guys have any question from last week or any expectations from this week? Um, okay, all good. Perfect. Okay. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, super. So today's session is about sharpening the harpoon. Um, Last week we spoke about mentally prepping for the hunt, which was um, basically trying to sort of get in the right mindset and setting the right expectation for yourself before going through this whole process. And this process is going to be, at least 2 to 3 months, like 60 to 90 days, um, where after I think the fourth or fifth week, you should be able to apply. And the rest of the time is basically following up and closing those conversations. Um, so once you're in the right mindset and you have the right expectations, the second step in this whole process is getting the right tools. Now, what do I mean by the right tools? Um, you basically have a few things that you can in your toolkit that you can use to crack this whole process open. And the first step in that whole process is getting the right CV, creating a sharp CV. Now, when I say a sharp CV, that I'm being very specific, and there's a very um, the sharp word is intentional. The reason I'm using sharp is because it should come across as something that sort of is very pointy and clear to understand for the reader. Now, what is a CV? A CV is a digital equivalence of yourself. Um, when the person looking at your CV reads the CV, they should be able to understand your life journey, professional life journey. They should be able to understand, what all hard work you've done over the years. Uh, the CV should represent over the years what all have you put your life energy into. And this is a document that you should be proud of because it should capture all your um, achievements, all your um, the work that you've done, and what all you have achieved in your professional careers. So, creating this document is a very, very important exercise. Right. Now, the next step is how do you get started? Now, I'm going to start with a very simple exercise, and this is also going to be this week's assignment that you have to convert. If you don't have a CV, then create a CV, or if you have a CV already, then you have to create it in a template that we are going to talk about next. So the first step here is to exhaustively list down all your achievements, all your numbers, all your projects that you worked on, all your hobbies, all your skills. If you've worked on any business deal, if you've um, you know any kind of work that you've done throughout these years, you should sort of list them down on a piece of paper, on a Word document. So start with just doing an exhaustive exercise. This is a no judgment kind of exercise. If you've done any kind of internships, if you worked at a coffee shop as a barista, if you've done cold calling as an intern, if you have been part of a business deal that sort of helped the company crack a proposal, any and everything sort of goes in this. And I also mentioned hobbies, skills. You should also mention all your hobbies and interests and skills exhaustively. um, Once you've done the exhaustive listing, you should then get to the next step. Are you guys with me till now?
Yes, Sujit.
Yes, Sachit.
Okay, perfect. So when I meant getting the details right, I meant put down all the exhaustive points in detail. Um, so let's say you like trekking, for example, and don't just stop there, right? Write down where all have you gone for a trek. Like over the years, if you've gone, let's say, for the Annapurna trek, so write down I've gone for Annapurna, like the ABC circuit. I have completed that in 2 days. Um, Climbed to a height of 13,000 feet. Um, with a group of four um, international trekkers, etc. So, uh, are you getting the drift that you have to basically drill it down to a point where you have all the numbers and data points in place? Like anything you mention. Let's say, for example, you do, like I mentioned, like if you're doing cold calling as an intern, don't just stop there saying that I did cold calling. Write down how many calls did you make and do a rough estimation. Let's say you made 50 calls in a day and you did that exercise for a week. Made 50 into 7 calls in a week, then closed, let's say, 5 um, in that funnel. um, was able to convert um, was able to convert 5, or was able to convert 50 people from cold lead to warm lead, and then warm to hot. So mention all the details that you have from memory, from going back in your email, from your work. So in this document, there should be nothing that is that you can question later. That, hey, is like, um, what more detail could I add here? So you should be satisfied with the amount of information that's in this document. Okay, once you have all of that in a single document, any questions on this? Like, what all you're supposed to add in this free flowing document?
No, Sujit.
Okay, cool. So once you have all of this in that no judgment document, start. We will basically, I'll show you the template also, but we will start with a one pager CV. The reason to basically do a one pager CV is to put yourself under artificial constraints to showcase only the most relevant pieces. So you have an exhaustive list of your achievements, your hobbies, your skills, your positions of leadership, everything that you've done in your professional life. And we are basically going to take all of that and convert that into a one pager CV. So what we want to do is basically capture the essence of everything you've done in a very succinct way. Um, Second point I want you guys to remember is that you have to write for your audience. Um, when writing in a CV, understand who is going to read that CV. Like if you're going to apply in a specific industry, um, you have to understand the mindset of the person who's going to be hiring you. Um, so don't uh, get into this singular focus of this is how I'm going to write this document. This document can be different for different industries, different for different jobs. And you have to be clever in the way that you basically write this document so that it, one, captures the person's attention and makes them understand what you've done and how is it relevant for the job that they are looking at you for. Um, so when the person is reading this document, they should be able to relate um, your experience with the opening that they have. With me till now?
Yes, Sachin.
So it is, I mean, they also say that if we use the jargons or that terminology which is there in the job description, that would also help in identifying the right profile.
Hmm. Right. So if, let's say, I was applying for a management consulting role, um, I would not sort of do very simple language, because that is not what they expect from a consultant, for example. Um, but if I was applying for a freelance writer role, I would basically make the CV in a way that is the most easiest to understand. Like I would use sentences, I would use words that showcase that I know how to write clearly and I think very clearly. I would not try and complicate things. So that's a Barka. So for you, it would be different rather than Bismay, who would want to, let's say, do a product role. So for him, like understanding what a product requirement document is, PRDs, what a BRD is, like using those terminologies might be essential for him to basically crack stuff like this, like using words like CAC or um, AOV. So understanding what role you're applying for, what industry you're applying for, and then sort of sitting down and writing this one pager.
Got it.
The other most important thing in this is don't lie in your CV. See, people do exaggerate in their CVs, but the person hiring you, and especially you will have multiple rounds of interview, they will catch on to an exaggeration if they ask you two questions into it. Um, so it's better to not lie um, on your CV. And I would say don't exaggerate too much. 10%, 20% sure, but it's worse for you if they realize that you are basically faffing, or if you have included something that you haven't done, and you've included that only to just showcase your CV or get a boost in your CV. So it's better to have less and then impress them in the interview rather than have more and disappoint them in the interview. Okay. Now in this one pager, how are we going to basically divide this one pager? This is going to be 60% your work experience, 10 to 15% about your education, and 25 to 30% about your awards that you won or extracurricular activities or positions of leadership, any projects that you've done. Imagine the last bit as a more catch-all thing that you want to do to showcase who you are as a person to them. The work experience bit we will use to build a narrative, a professional narrative for the person screening your profile. See, when a HR looks at your CV, they basically look at it for 10 to 15 seconds to understand, like, are you relevant for the job that they're hiring for? And अगर उस 10-15 सेकंड में they basically like are able to understand कि हाँ ये बंदा सही है, like they basically fit the profile मोटा मोटा 60% 70% if they fit the profile, if they fit the requirement that the recruiting manager has given them. um, and usually this is how the recruiting manager tells the HR कि मुझे कोई चाहिए जो YouTube समझता है, I want someone who basically is a sales guy, um, because that's the amount of discussion the HR sort of like they sort of boil it down to one or two things that they want to see in the CV. So if they see that in your CV, you basically go through round one, which is the screening bit. Sometimes they will also give you a call to understand are they reading it right, and do you fit the profile. But mostly the telephonic screening is more about where you're placed, are you willing to move, what's your current salary, how much are you expecting, so that they can sort of fit you right, so that you don't sort of go through the hiring funnel and come out disqualified because of XYZ reasons, that you can't move or you can't basically work on Saturdays, or you can't you don't fit the budget that they have. So the work experience bit becomes very, very critical to get shortlisted. So use that as a narrative, and we'll sort of cover that in this session also. How do you do that? In this section, use keywords that are relevant to the job. Like I said, the one or two things or three things that the HR wants to see, you should have them. If you're applying for an analytics role, understand that the person might want to see a Tableau experience or a an analysis experience, or someone who understands the sector, who's created what is it called, the uh, white paper, or a white paper on the sector. If you're applying for that kind of research kind of role, so get in the shoes of the person screening and interviewing for that role, and then write this document, because that way you have an anchor, and they will have an anchor to basically base the conversation on, and you are basically secretly anchoring the whole process to your advantage, because you've used because you've given them information to talk um, something common about. Are you guys following what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. ठीक है. Um, the second bit, the education bit. This one's pretty simple. So mention your high school, mention your college, mention your masters. The good thing is that if you have great marks, then write great marks. Like write the first distinction, or 90% or whatever you want to write. But if you don't have good marks, you can avoid writing the marks, because most of the people don't really care about this. Um, 70-80%. If they care about it, they'll ask you, and that at that point you can tell them. But you don't want to disappoint them in the beginning. Um, so avoid writing the marks if they are too low. Under the awards and extracurricular activities, this is a very interesting section, and um, you should use it to your advantage as much as you can. Here, diversity is a great thing. What do I mean by diversity? I mean any physical achievements you've done. If you've done a 10K, if you've done a trek, if you've done something that is physically demanding, it shows that you have strength of character, because anyone who basically has gone for a difficult trek understands that it requires a lot of mental strength to be able to complete that. So that makes you stand out, a physical achievement. If you've done any kind of social work, if like volunteer somewhere, if you joined an NGO, if you basically help teach your mates kids how to read, etc., mention that kind of stuff. um, it makes you stand out. Any positions of leadership that you've held, um, outside of your professional work, if you have done that, mention that. um, a lot of people mention travel as their skill, but mention travel in a very pointed way, that I've traveled 28 states in the country. um, I have covered all the national parks. um, like stuff that basically makes it sound more interesting when having a conversation. Everyone likes to say like I like to travel, but that doesn't make up for a good conversation, because uh, that doesn't give any information. Like people like to write, oh, I am a foodie, but um, if you write I instead of writing I'm a foodie, right, I've experimented with micro. Um, there's a kind of food that basically requires microbiology to basically create the food. Um, just make it sound more interesting. If you actually have an interest, then include it. Uh, I've worked on a farm, for example. Like I volunteered and went to Pondicherry to work on a farm. So mention all of those things, but in a very pointed way, that if the person looking at it reads it, and they bring it up in the conversation, they are excited about it talking to you. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए उनको लगे कि ये पढ़ के कि ये तो सभी करते हैं. This is something run of the mill. The CV is the document that you use to stand out. There are hundreds of applicants who are applying for the same job. This document should shine, and the reason for it to shine is because you will mention things that will make you stand out. So use this document to help them understand who you are. And you will not have a lot of time, so you'll have to be very, very intentional and purposeful while writing this document. Okay, any questions, Avitak?
Can you include certifications also?
Yeah. In awards, you can write certifications.
Okay.
Sachin, do you consider when we are writing work experience, is it do we need to write mostly around the achievements during the work, during
Yes.
our as a
Yes.
part of work experience, or uh, can we also include the job responsibilities that we
I will come to that, and that's a very important thing. Just in a few points, I'll come to that, and I'll answer your question. Okay. Okay. So what do I mean by focus on the meat and not the salad? I mentioned you have 10 to 15 seconds to basically get the interviewer's attention. So if you mention stuff that is not relevant, you will automatically get disqualified. So um, a lot of people like to basically just like write 3 4 lines about ओ मैंने ये भी किया मैंने वो भी किया फिर ऐसे हुआ फिर वैसे हुआ like that's good to have and you should sort of talk about it during the interview if asked, but in your CV try and sort of focus on what you've actually achieved, and write it in a way that makes uh, that basically okay. So let's say in a job you have 4 or 5 bullet points that you have shortlisted that this is what I want to write. Those bullet points should not be in a random order, they should be in an order of importance. um, that what is the most meatiest part of the job that you've done that should come first. Let's say you were hired as a writer, write about what your achievements are as the writer. If you were involved in other projects, sure, that's point number 2 or point number 3, but the reason you were hired for the job was to write articles. So write the amount of articles you've written, the amount of words you've written, what is the impact they've had, the impressions they've created, the CTR that's had. So very very important to basically prioritize information in a way that it goes from most important to least important, and sometimes least important you should remove also because even though you think it's important, the other person might not feel it's as relevant. Okay. Um, if it's okay, so a couple of lenses you can use to basically write down those points is either write what's the most relevant thing or pick the most impressive thing in your CV in the points that you have. So go from like most impressive to least impressive, and that will also give you a lot of like that will help you sort of prioritize information better. Uh, Two more things I want to tell you in this. Like sometimes we confuse being involved in things as being contributing to it. Like sometimes you're part of a project. Remember school में 5 लोगों का group बनता है and you know not everyone has done the work but you're part of the group and you feel like you can write that on your CV and you can get away with it. Don't do that. Sure, you've been part of multiple projects in your office because of XYZ reasons, but if you've not contributed to them, if you've not done the actual work, and you've not contributed to the result, remove them. Weed out all the unimportant stuff like this because it will not help you in the interview. If you get selected and the person is impressed by the project that you've written, and they will ask you to drill down into it, and you will not have answers, you will get disqualified. So don't dig a hole for yourself. Remove stuff that you know any non-work that you've included in your CV. Remove it from the work expert. Any points that you've added for vanity reasons. Key. This is something that I'm. This looks good, and you've added it to your CV. Remove that. Um, it will not work. Like it will probably work in your screening round or the first round, but it will not work in your technical round. So remove those vanity points. Okay. So when writing the CV, you should, and this is the best practice, and you have to start each sentence, each bullet point with an action verb. I created so and so, sold um, product worth, $10,000, initiated a project, XYZ. So use the action verbs to basically describe what you achieved in that specific job. I will give you a list of action verbs that you can use to create this after this, and also the template. So this is just a best practice I want you guys to be aware of. So Bismay, this is your point. This document is an achievement document. This is a results document. The person wants to know what have you actually achieved. आपने काम किया होगा sure, but आपने achieve क्या किया is more important to the person than what actually you've done. So remember how I said, like, when you're writing the exhaustive document, make sure that you quantify each thing. Like if you're going on a trek, write down what is the height you've trekked to, how many steps you've taken, how many days they took, etc. Those are all quantification of the activity that you've done. So each bullet point in your CV should be one qualitative aspect and should have a quantitative aspect. Um, Quantitative helps the person realize what is the impact you've had. Like for a business role, for example, there are P&L roles which basically range from handling a crore a month to 100 crores a month. So the difference is the work is the same, right? Because you have to manage a team, you have to basically figure out how to grow the business, what is the GTM strategy, etc. But quantifying all of those terms will help the person understand if you fit the right bill or not. Like a 50 crore P&L kind of person looks very different from a 200 crore P&L kind of person. So unless you quantify those things, it doesn't help the person understand who you are. Um, like a person writing content versus editing content is very different. A person managing a bunch of content editors looks very different than an individual contributor. Um, a person leading a team of 5 people versus 50 people looks very different. So quantify each activity in your CV, because that will help the person understand how to place you um, in their hiring process. When writing these bullet points, of course, you have to be very achievement oriented. You have to quantify each bullet point, but also um, you have to mention what was the state of things when you picked them up, and what was the state of things when you were done with it. Um, because what you want to do is like tell them about the impact you've had in this role. Are you guys clear with that point? Because that is very important.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Ayush, Sumesh.
Yes.
Yes, the then and now situation. Correct. Um, the way to also do this, one more way to do this is, if you know your KPIs, you can basically say like what are the KPIs you have achieved, and that's a very easy way to quantify the work you've done, because वो समझ आएगा बिल्कुल सीधा सीधा कि if you are a conversion expert and you raise the CTR from 1.5 to 2.5 on a lead base of 1,000 leads per day, that sort of quantifies your achievement in a very very specific way, that you were able to deliver. And 1% conversion on 1,000 uh, lead base is a lot, and you can sort of write, this is the kind of money impact I had on the business. I was able to help um, let's say, increase the top line from 10 lakh to 15 lakh because of my skills. So that becomes very, very impressive for the person to reading it, that, hey, this is a person who knows their craft very well. And if I hire them, I won't have to sort of worry about this work at all. Okay. I wanted to show you guys a template CV. Um, Give me a second. Till then, are there any questions till now? If you guys.
Yeah. So can I double down on my earlier question?
Hmm.
I was saying right about we were talking about PM's job responsibilities, right? Creating PRDs or low fidelity wireframes or
Hmm.
working in agile environments. Now, these are typical keywords that even HRs look at.
Hmm.
कि इस बंदे ने ये सब डाला है कि नहीं CV में, right?
Hmm.
But not necessarily those are can be directly converted into achievements. Like I could write something like my product revenue went from X dollars to Y dollars.
Hmm.
Yeah, my team, I started a team and scaled it to 0 to 20 and things like that.
Hmm.
But so is it then necessary to add this typical or basic job responsibilities of a PM just for the sake of those keywords? Or if that's the case, is there any other section like skills or competencies that I can add them there?
Um, so the keywords like PRD and low wireframe, etc., is something that you can write as I created these for that project. You should write them as an achievement. Um, I hope that's what you're asking. This way.
Yeah, sorry.
What were you saying?
I was just trying to listen to what you're saying.
Oh, no. So the keywords that you basically mentioned for the product role, you have to mention them in the work X.
Okay.
Because
But not necessarily they will be very quantifiable because everybody would be writing the same things, right? Because everybody.
So give me an example. I'll help you quantify it.
Yeah, so let's say I created a low fidelity wireframes before going ahead with my designer for high fidelity for 5 modules of my product, right?
Hmm.
So is that something that I should necessarily add? Because for me, it may not be a very big achievement, so to say. It will be just my day to day or work. Right? The achievement will be growing my product revenue or increasing my user base or something like that, right? Or more like critical metrics, product metrics.
So if you are basically switching roles and let's say you already have the designation of a product manager, and then you run the 0 to 1 cycle for a cyclical product role. You sort of done the whole life cycle, product life cycle multiple times. Then you don't have to get into the details of, oh, I've created a document and I've done the work with a designer and then I've done all of that, because then it becomes obvious that you have relevant experience in that thing. But let's say you're switching from um, a customer facing role to a product role, then you should sort of mention all of these things, because you don't have a lot of relevant experience without it.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
So you mean to say if there are not very critical success metrics, then these are the typical.
then yeah, you have to work with what you have. Basically, is what I mean. ठीक है. So the things that we basically talked about earlier. So this is a one pager CV that I had created um, when I was, I think, 2020 during the lockdown. Okay. So if you see, it's very straightforward. 60% work experience, then education, um, and then extracurricular activities and awards, etc. ये थोड़ा lopsided है because uh, I had a lot of work experience rather than awards and extracurricular activities, but I've sort of beefed up on that in the past 2 3 years. Um, so you see, like, you write down the the position, the department, the company, location, and the industry, and your tenure in that um, company. Then you want to write what all did you do. Like for me, there was a lot of like co-creation, created, promoted, built, ran, undertook, built. So these are action words, like a built. So what I want to basically showcase myself as is a creator. That I create products, I create projects. I'm a 0 to 1 person. I'm an entrepreneurial guy. So for me, it always sort of boiled down to what have I actually created and what is the impact it had. Sometimes I didn't have the numbers, like back when I didn't know that all of this was important. Like for example, Car Dekho, when I was leading product, I don't have the numbers here because here I didn't know that I needed all these numbers. So I'm not sure what is the kind of impact I had, but I can still like ballpark it now and sort of give the numbers. But because I've had, almost 7 years of experience after that, it sort of is not that relevant because the top 2 3 experiences is what the person is going to look at because that's the most relevant experience you have. Um, Education is very straightforward. Like I said, don't mention marks if you don't have them. So, as you see, I have not mentioned my marks. Um, then awards and extracurricular activities are also very, like, I interned at FTII in my college days. So then I put that. I volunteered as an editor. Acted in a play, so I added that. So it sort of shows some kind of diversity in terms of who I am, and then it creates fodder for the interviewer that, hey, like, I can talk about other things if I want. One more thing that it sort of aids is the cultural round. That if you go through the screening, the technical and the managerial round, उसके बाद फिर cultural round आता है और उसमें फिर it's more about who you are as a person. So you want to give enough pointers for the person to talk to you about something, and it should be a pleasant conversation because that is all that matters in that conversation. Cultural round is nothing but like having a pleasant conversation. It should not come across as this person I can't talk to. You should be able to talk to the person. I mean, at least that's what the person should go away thinking. Okay, any questions on this? Because this is how I want you guys to basically create your own CVs also.
Sachet, I have a question.
Hmm.
In this particular format,
Hello.
am I audible, Sachet?
Yeah, you are audible. Yeah.
Sachet, my question on this format is that isn't this format too text-heavy format?
Okay.
Because I have prepared a few versions of my CV, and when I get it reviewed by some people, I get this feedback that uh, there's a lot of text. There are different blocks of text in a one-pager doc, and at times some people give the feedback that it is difficult to read.
Hmm. So it depends on what you're trying to basically do. If you're trying to become a designer, then you should not do this CV. There are a few exceptions to this CV. If you're trying to showcase your skills as a Photoshop guy, you should definitely like spruce this up with something. If you're trying to, what other roles? I can only think of designer right now, but um, what are you trying to, like, what kind of roles are you looking at, Shutosh?
I'm looking at digital marketing or e-commerce key account management
Then you should
kind of.
definitely stick to this format
Hmm.
because this is a data role that you're looking at.
Hmm.
So this format would aid you in getting the jobs that you want.
Understood. One more question. Uh, when we are mentioning specific numbers regarding certain organizations or roles in the past, uh, how is it looked upon by the interviewer that whether you are revealing too much about your previous organizations
Oh,
or should
no.
you
So,
keep it open ended?
so unless you give information, how will they understand what you've done?
Hmm.
So, your obligation to your previous company is that if you signed an NDA with them,
Hmm.
that's the only obligation you have. If you haven't signed an NDA and that's not the case for like 99% of the people, then you're okay. You're free to basically like. Uh, and in most cases, when you have signed an NDA, people don't put it on their CVs, but when they're having conversations, they do sort of like give a ballpark of uh, what kind of numbers they've done.
Hmm. Hmm. Understood, Sachin. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, great. So we're gonna move on from the CV. I will share a whole document like I did last time as an assignment with instructions on how to create a CV with a template CV with action verbs, etc. So you'll have all of that. Whatever we spoke about, all of that will be covered in that document also. Uh, but make sure you do this in the week because next week we're going to use all of these tools for the next phase. Okay, so moving on. The next tool that you have, and this is a very important tool, is a LinkedIn profile. Now, who will tell me why a LinkedIn profile is important?
To build professional network.
Correct. And
And it also tells about your entire work experience, your professional journey. That is also one of the ways to look at your work.
right, right. Um, why did I write impressionable LinkedIn profile?
Because that is the first thing people check on Google, like to verify or to just to Google about someone.
Hmm.
Maybe LinkedIn profile is where someone will stumble upon as the first
Right.
digital imprint of any candidate.
Correct. Correct. So you guys got it right. It's the tip of the spear. It's basically thing that you will, um, the first thing that the person will end up seeing when you, and specifically for this process, the right profile will make the right impression. The right impression will get you the first conversation. The first conversation will get you the first round of interview. The first round of interview will get you the other rounds of interview. And by the end of this process, you will get a job. So, very, very important to make the right impression. How do you make the right impression? Like, if you ever gone for a networking event, the first thing that people see is your face, your body language, what you're wearing, who you are, and it's a human thing. You cannot avoid it. And imagine the LinkedIn profile as the digital equivalent of uh, the first impression that you have. So you want to make the best first impression. So the profile picture that you have, two things very important in the profile picture. Look approachable. Like when you are sending connection requests, they will look at your face. Make an make a face that basically looks approachable. Um, don't smile too much. Don't not smile also. But just make sure that the picture looks. Uh, it should not be too serious. It should not be too professional. It should not be too casual with you wearing goggles on a beach. A semi-professional profile picture works. Are you guys with me till now?
Yes.
Okay. Um, like in this group, for example, like because I can't see your faces, so I have to make impressions depending on the profile picture that you put. Uh, Now, looking at Sumesh's profile photo, it would feel like he's aspirational about the beach, right? But it tells me nothing about him as a person, apart from like he likes beaches, uh, or about Simmer that um, he likes public speaking, for example. Is that something that's relevant to his job? I don't know. But for example, Bismay's picture tells me that he's very careful as a person because he's wearing a mask in his profile picture. Ayush is, hasn't put in the effort to put the profile picture. Ashutosh has a formal attire. He's not looking in the camera, so I can't tell exactly what he looks like. But um, so Barkha has a front-facing face. I think that's a good picture, Barkha. So the impressions, and I was being very candid because those are the impressions you're making through your profile picture here. And this is a closed room, but LinkedIn profile you can't really control who looks at what. So make sure that. But Barka, you could improve the picture because there's glare in the background. Uh, sorry. Um, so
Yeah, it has to be a clear background.
yeah, yeah. So because you don't control who looks at your LinkedIn profile, you have to basically get the picture right because that makes a first impression. Um, that could sort of, and the reason why it's important, it could sort of lead to you having more connections than other people, or you having better, um, like you will send out like a lot of connection requests in the coming weeks. You could have 10%, 20% more conversion in your connections if you have the better profile picture. So make sure you get the profile picture right. Number two, profile byline. Why is profile byline important, guys? Profile byline is the one liner that you write with the photo.
So that's a gist of your places that you have worked on, profiles that you have told, or the mission that you want to achieve, kind of an objective.
Okay. Um, this is a place where you should not write that you are an achiever, you're a dreamer, you are a travel enthusiast. Like all those things are good, and like that gives your personality a lot of flair. But be simple and help the person understand what you do or who you are. Um, it should not be a reason why the person thinks you're not a serious person. Don't include emojis in your byline. Don't include these stars and caps or whatever people do. Keep it simple. Uh, make it easier to understand for the person who's basically looking at your request. The reason why it's important is because when you send a connection request, the only two things that the person looks at is basically your photo and your byline, right? Your name and byline is what shows up. Anyhow, Sumesh, you haven't said anything for a while. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So, yeah. So I was asking, when you send a connection request, what goes? Like the byline and the photo is two things that go, right?
Yeah, right. So I just want to ask, like, when we send a connection request, should we make it like a personalized message, like, rather than like a default message?
What do you mean, message?
Message like a, when we send any kind of connection request, like a there we can send like some message, like we can introduce ourselves.
Oh, that we'll come to that when we cover. We'll cover that in next week's session.
Okay.
On the communication. This is just to basically work on your own LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
Okay. About is basically a section where you should explain who you are professionally in a few lines. Don't overcomplicate it. Help the person sort of like think about it like an executive summary of your professional experience. For freshers, Ayush, what do you write in your about right now? Ayush, right there.
Hello. Like what skill I acquired during my internship and intern, so I write about that part.
Okay, nice. Also write about your professional aspirations
Okay.
because you don't have like an executive summary of your professional experience. Write about what you actually want to do, like as a professional. That will sort of help to set the context for your profile.
Okay.
Another important thing is that when you write your about, write it in a way that excites the person reading it. That it should not come across as, and this is for everyone, of course. It's not for, like, write it in a way that, actually, there's a lot of background noise. So, let me pause. Okay. Yeah, this. Okay. Nice. ठीक है. That's a good about. Yeah, so write it in a way that basically excites the person reading it, that they understand who you are professionally and they understand your professional, aspirations, and also they're excited about like you as a person because you're making the first impression. Imagine it like the opening few lines that you say, um, that would invite the person to a conversation. So write it in a way that makes the person more um, invested in your profile, that they basically scroll further and understand what your work experiences are. Okay, let's go to the experiences bit. Experiences is, I want to show you my profile. 1 second. You guys have already seen my profile, but I'll just take you through the experiences bit. Okay. So the experiences basically should be a simplification of your CV because you've done that exercise already for your CV. Just sort of summarize that in your um, work experiences and talk about the creamy stuff. Like the really the top level stuff, um, without giving too much detail because you want to save the details for the CV. This is just for the person to understand um, like what your experience has been. Like for example, this consultant role that I had, I worked with the co-founders to run the company, acting as general counsel and finance head. I built key finance systems, etc. But ये मैंने ऊपर ऊपर से बता दिया कि मैंने क्या किया, लेकिन एग्जैक्टली किया कैसे या फिर उसका इम्पैक्ट क्या था, इम्पैक्ट भी मैंने बता दिया बिकॉज आई वांटेड टू बेसिकली शोकेस like in very sort of simplistic terms ki what is the top line impact I had. um, so I try and sort of summarize your experience in a way that sort of makes it look very impressive. Like यहाँ पर I basically pioneered offline games, created 7 games, sold for more than 1 crore. So all of this sort of is, trying to um tell the person, oh, this guy basically, did something while he was working. You guys on board with that?
Yes, Sujit.
Yeah, this is the simple stuff. So once you create your CV, I think LinkedIn is is a byproduct of your CV. ठीक है, add-ons क्या क्या है? इसमें skills होते हैं, so add your top 5 skills. Um, recommendations. It's good to get some recommendations. If you don't have them, don't worry about it too much. Uh, One important thing is every profile has a URL. So simplify your URL so that you can use it more easily. There's a settings and you can go and shorten your URL to your name or something so that you can use it later. Okay, cool. Any questions till now? Otherwise, we'll move on to cover letters.
So under experiences, even in LinkedIn also, do we have to mention just the relevant points, or can we cover other aspects of the work responsibilities that we have taken?
Give me an example.
For example, like if a task is not that relevant, it's a mediocre level task, but if I want to add it to my profile,
You can.
right?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
So when you say mediocre, what do you mean?
Adding, I mean, that cannot be quantified much. I mean, it's not contributing much to the role that I'm doing. It is a part of the role, but it is not much into highlight, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yes, you should definitely add everything. If the one pager allows you to basically add all of these points, you should definitely add them. And sometimes you won't have the data and you can't do anything about it, but you still want to show it. So show it. It's fine because it's the work you've done.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, now that you have the CV and LinkedIn sorted, this is a very important bit, cover letters. Cover letters का बहुत simple है. I think the psychology here is that people love letters. A very detailed, first person written, um, addressing details, saying like, oh, I love your company, I love its values, I love its mission statement, everything that you're doing is right, I also want to be a part of it, I've been doing this in my life, I want to basically be doing this in your company, etc. Everyone wants to hear it, but not enough people basically put the effort to writing these letters. And I want to tell you, effort is how you win the game. If you write detailed letters to people, you will get responses. Even if they're saying no, you will at least get a response. The reason why most people don't get responses is because it's a low effort. Like the person going through your profile or reading your resumes feels like it's a low effort rejection. इसने भी effort नहीं डाला है अप्लाई करने में, मुझे क्यों effort डालना है इसको reply करने के लिए. Use this as an advantage. Use effort as an advantage. And effort, I mean, we'll sort of do it smartly so that you don't have to end up writing every cover letter every time from scratch. But understand that this is what makes you stand out. You have to use, let's say, MBA करने के लिए जाते हैं तो वो तीसरा ऐसे ऑप्शनल देते हैं. दो ऐसे तो हर कोई लिखता है. जो लोग ऑप्शनल ऐसे लिखते हैं दे हैव एन एडवांटेज. सीवी हर कोई देता है. एवरीवन बेसिकली सबमिट्स देयर सीवी. People who write cover letters have an advantage. There are hundreds of people applying to the same job. You want an advantage. This thing gives you an advantage. So use this to get attention from recruiters. Use it to stand out from the people who will apply. Now, what can you do with the cover letter? Number one thing that you can do with the cover letter is, actually, before I get into these important things, couple of things you can establish while writing the cover letter for the person reading it is that you can impress them with your writing. A lot of jobs require you to be a clear communicator, being able to express yourself clearly through the written format. If you can do that in the first go with the cover letter, they will give you a lot of brownie points for that. That you have great writing skills. Second thing they should sort of get an impression of is that you're a clear thinker. If you have clear thinking, you will automatically come in their good books. That this person has the ability to basically think through a certain problem, a certain um, way of basically communicating well. So once you have a cover letter basically that represents you as a clear thinker and someone who basically can write well, it will give you a head and shoulder advantage over all the other applicants. Yeah. Okay. So point number one, building a narrative. So cover letter क्या है? Cover letter कहानी है, right? If you tell the right story, uh, they will understand what your professional experience has been and why you want to work there, which are the two most important things that they want to basically understand. So, so number one, you should explain what your professional experience has been. Number two, you should explain what you want to be doing going forward. Um, this exercise will help you sort of answer that first question, that tell me something about yourself. Like when you have to open in an interview, you will be able to answer that very very clearly after doing this writing exercise. A lot of people basically lose people, the interviewer's attention in the first 30 seconds because they are not able to stitch together a good story. You want to hold attention, tell a good story. That's the only way to basically hold the person's attention. Good. Should I move on?
Yes, Sachin.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, don't be negative while writing the cover letter. Like when you're writing about a previous experience that's not gone good, when you say like, oh, I left this job because my boss sucked, etc., it does not come across as something that will be taken positive. Uh, Something bad happened. It's fine. Like it's something that you had to deal with. It's your problem, not the interviewer's problem. Um, they don't want to read about stuff where you basically are bitching about your previous boss or previous work or whatever. So don't include all of those things. It doesn't reflect nicely. It doesn't reflect good on you. So don't include gossip or negative stuff. When you're writing sentences in a cover letter, write it in a very simplistic fashion. Like use short to mid level sentences. Like don't go for like very very long sentence because the readability becomes a problem. तो छोटे sentences use करो. Write them in a way that even a 10th grader will understand. That shows clarity of thought, by the way. So if you can simplify what you're trying to say, that anyone can, like even a school child can understand what you're trying to say, it'll become easier for the person to read. Last tip I have for you, use Grammarly. Don't get into this whole spelling mistake and wrong sentence formation, etc. Use Grammarly and it sort of helps you just do all of this in a much easier way. Okay. There are three parts to this. There is the start, where you summarize your experience, the body, where you build the story, and the end, which should basically cause them to take an action. They should basically, um, you know, reply to you, or um, yeah, basically what you want is them to reply to you either with a yes or a no. So I just want to take you through a sample cover letter, and we'll sort of end the session there. So the first paragraph is basically the start, which is summary of what your professional career has been. It sort of talks about it's a snapshot of what you've done, basically. If you see here, like, my key contribution has been setting up operations, products, and team. In the past 9 years, I've done this 5 times successfully. अब ये बिल्कुल ही मैंने डिटेल में नहीं लिखा है because I want to tell the person who I am, in a very very 3-4 line kind of a way. Then I go into the life story. Then I basically say मेरी first job में क्या हुआ, मैंने क्या किया, फिर second job में क्या हुआ, फिर उसमें क्या हुआ, third job में क्या हुआ, etc. And then eventually I write what do I want to do going forward, and why have I come to that point in my life. Uh, After a successful stint here, I learned, what did I learn here? Now that my brand is automated, I'm looking out for opportunities at early stage startups to lead growth. Okay, this is a thing. And then what you will do is um, write, and this is just the common sample letter. The call to action would be that um, you basically writing that, hey, I love your company, and I would like to basically at least have a conversation with you to understand more about this opportunity, so that um, you know I can basically invite them to a conversation. That's what the next step is of writing to someone. That, can I basically take half an hour of your time to talk to you about this? I will share this sample cover letter also with you guys, so that
Is there a specific length, or it can be a couple of pages?
no, just make it. The problem with couple of pages is that no one will read couple of
They
pages.
won't have the time to read that.
Yeah. So
Exactly, because do they actually read this much long, or
they, um, if you write well, and the person is interested, we can basically. I mean, this is a very basic cover letter that I wrote like a few years ago. But you can improve upon it, and now that there's chat gpt, I think it is just easier. Like, if you give the right inputs, and it'll give you a nice cover letter also, and you can sort of summarize or shorten that to make it more crisp. But the concept here is that you basically start with a summary, include your professional experience in reverse chronological order, and then in the end, sort of say, why are you motivated to join their company? What is it that excites you about them? And say, like, can I have half an hour of your time to basically discuss this, or can I take 15 minutes of your time to have a conversation about this? So that you are asking for a very specific thing in the end, to basically take the conversation forward. Okay, guys.
Right. Sachin, if we generally apply via the easy apply with LinkedIn, and then we do have to upload a CV. But then what we see is they look at skills which are available on your profile, the LinkedIn profile, and the skills that they might have added to the job description. So is there I haven't had much success with such kind of easy apply applications. So is there any other approach to
Yeah,
this?
so we'll discuss the approach next time, next session. In this session, I want you guys to basically just have the right CV, the right LinkedIn, and the right cover letter. And in terms of cover letter, what you want is basically a right format, like a base cover letter, which you will then sort of uh, change. And of course, the CV also you'll have to change depending on where you're applying, etc. Um, but at least the core work would be done. That this is what you will be sending out. Easy apply, etc. is a good way, but um, what you want is to basically use all channels available to apply. There is no wrong channel to apply, but a lot of jobs, at least a lot of good jobs, you can get through either referrals or by talking to people who basically are hiring directly through LinkedIn. So I will talk about alternate methods also in the next session. Actually, the session after that is where I'll talk about how to apply. Next session is about how to shortlist companies and how to sort of get the right, how to research and shortlist companies.
Sure. One last thing for mine. In the cover letter, do we need to add one paragraph at least at the end, like which sites, what do I bring to the table based on the product, or based on the position that is open, the job?
You can. Um, Sorry, is that a question or are you saying we should do that?
No, I'm just asking since I didn't see it in your cover letters.
Yeah, because it's only the story and the beginning. What I usually do is when I'm writing the cover letter to a specific company, then I add that bit. Because for every company, because I'm applying for roles which are, at least for me, I'm applying for roles which are more P&L roles. So I kind of mention the business objective while talking about it. So it's a good way to sort of like what you're saying is a good way to sort of do the fitment for the job that hey, with my skills of product management from XYZ place, I bring XYZ skills, and I would love to sort of collaborate and sort of run this thing or do this thing because I feel like I'll be really good at it in a more sophisticated fashion, of course.
Right. Okay.
Cool. Any other question, guys, about the CV, cover letter, LinkedIn profile before we end the session? Okay, sounds good. So that's it for this week. Yeah, Ashutosh, you want to say something?
No, Sachet, I'm good.
Okay, cool. Okay, guys. I'll send out the assignments about the CV and cover letter. You guys will have all the resources and sample templates and cover letter. So spend the week to basically refine all of that. If you guys have any questions, just message me and we can talk about it. And see you guys next week.
Awesome.
Sure, Sachet. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Session.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Take care.